Behind every amazing flavor is an amazing human who has perfected their craft. Welcome to Flavors Unknown, a behind-the-scenes look at new flavors and the chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders who create them, with your host, Emmanuel.
Imagine a place where you can listen to trendy chefs and bartenders sharing their secrets behind the scenes, where they are talking about their paths to success, where you can get tricks from the kitchen or from behind the bar. In fact, you can get it all here on my podcast, Flavors Unknown. I am your host, Emmanuel Roche. Thank you very much for listening today. Every other week, I interview chefs, pastry chefs, and bartenders to discover their secrets behind the scenes. Today is episode number 14. And as usual, you can find the show notes at flavorsunknown.com. Click on the episode page. Today is a special episode. I was lucky to go to Hawaii at the end of last year, and I really love Kauai. The Napali coast, the Waimea Canyon, the waterfalls are magical. But what about the food? As usual, when I go on a trip, I planned my food and my drink tasting in advance. I identify several restaurants that I was interested in Kauai, and especially in the town of Kapa at the east side of the island. It's the restaurant JO2. I had really a great experience there, and I was pleased to meet the chef Jean-Marie Josselin. Yes, I know he's French. And I had a great discussion at the end of the dinner with him, and I have asked him if he would be a guest on Flavors Unknown. Jean-Marie Josselin is a renowned chef, and he was one of the pioneers of the Hawaiian Regional Cuisine. He was born in France. He had lived more than 30 years in Hawaii, and he has been nominated several times by the James Beard Foundation. Hi, Chef, and welcome to Flavors Unknown. I'm really pleased to have you on the show since I met you in Kauai in Hawaii.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. It was a pleasure to meet you there.
It was a great dinner. I have a first question for you, Chef. How would you describe your job in 10 words?
Oh, the best thing I ever did in my life was, that's cooking is my life. That's about it.
That's about
it's a passion. It's a passion, I just still enjoy it, 30, 40 years after I started cooking, Well, the funny thing, when I started cooking, I was not that great at it, but I just want to try to improve and improve and improve. And when I finally found a chef, give his time to teach me and trust me, then I started to fly. And that's something that I always remember now, when I have young kids, that comes to my kitchen, I try to motivate them to become very good chefs and try to become leaders. And sometimes this is all it takes, because now it's very interesting, with the new generation is, with the TV and everything that is available to them, a lot of them don't realize that it takes really a long time to become a chef. You see a lot of guys now, what they do is, they're very good for about a year and that's about it. And one of the reasons is because they don't have enough depth. So yeah, they're very creative but they cannot fall back on what they know, what they have learned for years. That's one of the biggest difference that I see now and before. When I finally find somebody that trusted me and really took the time to teach me, I started to fly, and that's where I decided that was really the line I wanted to go, becoming a chef, starting to look at other cuisine and really wanted to be what I am today.
Talking about the new generation, do you think that they have a wrong, let's say, image of what the job of a chef is, because they are influenced by what they see on TV and with all those chef competition, and this is not exactly the reality?
I think the new generation is very talented too. I don't think there's a gap there. The gap is that they look at the profession being very plush, very it's easy, It's like you go and put dishes and people are going to love what you do, but it's it's thought to be the truth. The truth is that you work 12 hours a day, you work when everybody is off, and it's tough work, So a lot of people go into this job thinking, oh, I'm going to become this, I'm going to become that, but they forgot how hard it is to get to that point. At the end of the day, it's commitment and it's love for the work, for the job. And if you don't have that, then you cannot succeed in this business. This business is all about grinding and be there every day and be willing to always learn from a different cuisine. When I learned in France, it's all about French cooking and rooted in very, very deep history. We in France, we very proud of what we do in a kitchen, and we have apprenticeship. We have a system that teach young, and then you go from places to places, and then you become a chef. But it takes years, to get to that point. It's very difficult. It's almost like in Japan, where it is very difficult to go up. But difficulty is great because you really become good. But here in America, it's like, there's no system like this. If you don't understand that you have to spend, a couple of years with really good chefs, to learn your basic, your technique, then it's very difficult to move up. And some guys are very, very gifted, so it's okay for them. But, like for a year and two, it's always funny. Sometimes you see restaurants that are doing so well for a year or two, and then they disappear. And like in Europe, you don't see that. Some of the restaurants have been there for years and they establish and the tradition continues and continues, So that's one of the biggest things. I've been in this country for almost 40 years now. And I see, the changes from 40 years ago to now. It's unbelievable. This country has become nowadays fantastic restaurant. So I think the young kids now have a lot of talent, but I think, it's the system that sometimes I feel is broken here, is not helping the young generation, because a lot of them now, they're not attracted to how difficult it is. They want to become chefs within a year or two. And that's, I think that's really wrong. It takes times to get there.
So if you could send a message to yourself, like 34 years ago, what would you tell the younger Jean-Marie Josselin?
The funny thing about this question is, I think, in our business, things change so quickly. I think it's every 5 years or so, the trend change. There's new ideas. The thing that everybody should remember is to really stay open-minded and really not be afraid to try different cuisine and establish a library of ideas where you can build up new ideas, new dishes, and keep your mind being creative. I think that's my biggest thing, like in Europe, especially in France. And I don't know how it is now because I didn't work there for very long. Like in France, it's so rooted in tradition that sometimes it's difficult for a young chef to get out of that, But now cuisine, the cooking are becoming worldly. That's the beauty of our business, is always changing.
JO2 is the name of your restaurant that you opened in 2014 on the island of Kauai. And this is a place that you said that you dreamed for a long time. So can you explain to us what JO2 is about?
It's really a restaurant that I wanted to evolve. JO2 is called also natural cuisine. Really, when I started the JO2, my idea was to create a vegetarian restaurant. And slowly by slowly, I have been introducing more and more vegetable dishes. At the end of the day, when I'm finished with JO2, I want the restaurant to be completely vegetarian. I think that's really the future of cooking. For example, like in Hawaii, we're starting to have a hard time to find fish now. It's still there, but I think in 10 years from now, I think the prices are going to be so high for fish and meat. It only makes sense that you have more and more vegetable dishes. If I go and look at a vegetarian restaurant, I'm really not impressed. It's always the same thing. There's always, it's very boring, and it's usually something that people don't really understand. So I think that's the biggest problem of our customer when they go to a restaurant and they see they would like to try vegetables, but nothing is really appealing to them. So they fall back onto meat, onto fish, onto things that they understand. And so for us, we have about 30 items on our menu, and 50% is vegetarian. And all the protein dish, like if we have fish or meat, it's always in that dish, a very important component is the vegetables. Very funny because when we started 3 years ago at JO2, very little people are ordering vegetable. And now it's probably about 70% of our sales. So there's an education that I wanted to do because a few years back, when I first opened JO2, I say, I want to do my own cheese. There's a couple of dishes that I wanted to do with my cheese. And so the first thing that I was looking at is try to get milk. On the island of Kauai, nobody sells milk because first of all, you cannot sell it. There's some kind of law that you cannot sell it. So you have to go to a supermarket and buy milk. But, the milk is not really good to do cheese. It's very inconsistent. So I was looking online where to buy milk, and I was looking, and then one day I see these links that there is an Hindu temple. There was a Swami that was doing cheese. And so I open it and I see this big Hindu Swami. It was like the guy is like 6'4", and he have this big wheel of cheese. And so I say, so I called the Hindu temple, and it took a few steps, to finally meet him. When I met him, it was like meeting a brother that I lost for years. We become very, very good friend. We become very good friend right away. So he said, I know of you, you're a chef and stuff like that. We're starting to talk, and he say one of the things that the Hindu do is like they refuse to serve meat or fish. They're completely vegetarian at the Hindu temple. And so he brought me to the garden that they have, because what they do, they're about 25 monks. In the temple, they do all their vegetables. As we talk, he told me that, how bad it is to really kill animals, to eat and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I was really like, wow, this is really what the food should be in a few years, because I think with all the disease that we have, all the cancer, all the things, eating really good vegetable can only be good for you. And I really believe that one day chefs are going to be almost like doctors. We are going to have to provide food to people that are nutritious, interesting, so people can go to a restaurant and eat vegetable like they eat meat. So, for me, I'm like, I'm really starting to pound my head, it's like, how can I evolve into a vegetarian restaurant, or a restaurant that serves much more vegetable without killing my business? Because, I still have to survive. I still, if people don't want a vegetarian, how can I mix the two and start building a clientele that one day I can become just a vegetarian restaurant?
You were talking before about that it is important to educate, your customers. So how do you do that? How do you talk to them about almost this like mission that you're talking about from like the chef, in the future, really focusing on, the consumer health?
After I met with the Swami, my first thing was, I've been on this island for a very long time. And one of the biggest thing, for the last 15, 20 years, it was to work with farmers. Try to bring Hawaii up to the mainland standard, and have very good farmers to work with. At one point, I have a lot of restaurants. I have a 6 or 7 restaurants. And then when I sold everything, I decided to go on a trip. And when I came back 2 or 3 years later, and I decided to open another restaurant, there's not much changes that happen in Hawaii. And it almost felt like, the Hawaiian Regional Cuisine, the movement that we started like 20 years ago, stopped. And really the progress that we made stopped, and there was nothing else. So my first step was to meet with farmers. And I met with some very young farmers. I did all the farmers market on Kauai. And every time I see a new guy, I approached him. I invite him at the restaurant. I'm starting to build a network of farmers that wanted to work with me to try new vegetables. And it is a challenge because Kauai is, you think you put a carrot in the ground, it's going to grow. But there's a lot of pests. There's a lot of weather changing. So, it could be 90 degrees one day and it can rain for 2 weeks after that. So there's a lot of challenges. farmer network that I put together were willing to work with me. So what I did is I bought seeds. I bought a lot of seeds. We work with the University of Hawaii too, because, they have a lot of seed that are made to grow just in tropical part of the country. Slowly by slowly, we're starting to build a garden, a market that I could draw from and buy from. And, suddenly I have Kauai melon. I have 8 different type of carrots. I have 36 different type of tomatoes. But it took a couple of years to do that. And when I did JO2, I know that it was going to take a while. So JO2 was just an evolution from protein-run restaurant to slowly but slowly getting into a vegetarian restaurant. That was my vision 10 years ago. 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So I say, when I finish cooking, I would take everything out, all the fish, all the meat, and we draw everything from the farmers.
Okay. So, and you are celebrating said vegetables in novel ways, in your menu. Can you give us some example of new ways that you are preparing vegetable in your restaurant?
For example, we have a squash that we do, and the squash is so tender. It's a long green squash. What we do is we slice it. We don't even cook it, because you have to realize that Kauai is not like New York or Boston or Los Angeles. Everything that we get to the restaurant is grown within 15, 20 minutes of the restaurant. So when we have a squash, the guys snap it from the vine and bring it in the morning. We're only 15 minutes away. When we slice the squash, it's completely tender, it's completely juicy, it's full of vitamin, full of nutrient. And then also one day I was at the farm. I went to see a cacao farm, where we do some of the chocolate on Kauai. It just happened that when they let the cacao mature, there's a liquid that comes out. And that liquid is actually like an alcohol. So if you ferment the liquid on the first day, it doesn't taste like nothing. But after 5 days, it tastes like alcohol. So what we do like a shave ice with it. The squash, we serve it with a little bit of honey that we have growing on Kauai, put a little bit of mustard grain, and then we put the shave ice on the squash. When I put this on the menu, it was amazing how many we sold. People eat this and they think about the creation behind the dish, and they think about how fresh it is and how good it tastes. They never ask about meat or fish. At the end of the day, it's how we put it together and with the creative ways that we do it. People know now, so they're not afraid. Like we do a sugar pea, for example, and we serve that with fermented Chinese black beans and coconut and Thai basil. When you eat this, it's very nutritive and it's also filling. And that's another thing that people always say, oh, I'm afraid if I have vegetarian food, I'm never going to be full, But no, you can be very full, especially when it's fresh, when there's a lot of nutrient, and you can get full very quickly.
You think that switching to 100% like a vegetarian menu, you are going maybe to lose some of your customers or maybe some tourists that are coming to the island?
That was kind of my fear at first, but it's becoming less and less of a fear because, like I say, it's around 70% of our sales now. I think it's going to be another couple of years before I get there, but I think I will get there. And, it's always a challenge because here on Kauai, the price of the land is so expensive that some of the farmers, some of the people that I selected first are now gone. They moved to the mainland because it's cheaper to do their farming there. It's very expensive in Hawaii. Everything is, the land is whatever you have, it's what you have, so all the challenge of finding the right people to cultivate what you need is not always easy. I think it's much easier on the mainland. So everything is multiplied by 2 here. You have to accept the challenge and force your way through, I'm very proud of what we did, in the last 3-4 years,
And this challenge of this growing vegetable, is it something only related to Kauai or it's true for all the other islands, in Hawaii?
I think there's islands that are better, like the Big Island is good. Maui is also good. I think Kauai, we saw isolated, with the last island of the chain. We have, there's a month, I forgot, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, we have 40 days of rain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, when you're a farmer and you have to deal with things like this, And when you lose crops after crops, like, for example, we have the Hawaiian melon, it's absolutely fantastic. When my farmer came in with it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best cantaloupe I ever have. So we sell them at the restaurant, we sell them by the ton, I mean, it was unbelievable. And so the season finished, and I say, we saved the seed. The year later, we're starting to grow. The melon comes almost to perfect, and there's like a mold that came in and destroy everything. And since then, we are not able to grow the melon again. It's like crazy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and like the tomatoes, for example, you think it's easy, but there's the fruit fly here. So what they do is the fruit fly attack the flower of the tomato, and then you don't have the tomato. And I ask them to do everything organically and as natural as possible, because I want to be able to say at the restaurant it's organic. That's it. There's no question. With the rise of allergies now, people are allergic to this, allergic to that. They cannot eat this, they cannot eat that. No wheat, no this. I think it's very important to come up with a food and a cuisine that is capable to accommodate everybody without any question. So what I want is my customer, when they come in, they say, oh, I cannot have this. We get you covered. I cannot have gluten. All this is done without gluten. So, for example, we came up with a tempura batter that is gluten-free. So, when people comes in, they say, oh, I cannot do that because it's tempura. And I say, no, you can have it because, we do ours with rice flour. And right away, people are like, it can be done. With the farming, it's, I really want everything to be as natural as possible. So, and that's the goal, again, is to come up with a food and a cuisine that will be the matrix for the new chef to come in and say, we can do that too as well.
I'm curious, Chef. You said that several years back you had, one time you had up to 6 restaurants on different, island in Hawaii. You even have a restaurant in Vegas. So personal reason you sold them and you traveled. And I want to go back to your travel later. But my question is, when you come back, because you had these experiences like from the different islands, why did you choose to come back to Kauai to reopen a restaurant with all the difficulties that you are describing now?
Well, I like Kauai. It's a lifestyle. It's a beautiful island. Great people. I've been there for 30 something years, so it feels like home. It smells like home. And I have all my friends, and I absolutely love the community. We have a great Japanese, Asian community with, so it's just a fantastic island to live in. So I decided to come back and do something here special. Because people always have supported me, for years here. I feel very comfortable here.
So can you describe your creative process? So how do you start? When you have to create a full menu, or if you have to create like a new dish, what is your starting point?
I always do dishes by dishes, and I usually it's driven by what the farmers are bringing anyway. What we do is we meet and we talk about 3-4 months from now, so let's try new seed. I would like to cook with this, do that. And so we get the seeds and we plant the seed. And, if I decide to go with 10 seeds, sometime I only have like 2 that come to reality, come to the kitchen. So you really have to think about, what is it that you want to do in 3 or 4 months from now? And then, I go from there. I decide, if you should have some Indian spice or be more Asian, or maybe a little bit more European or whatever, but it always starts from the farm, with our conversation with the farmers.
So some of your inspiration comes, I guess, from the travels that you have done, because after that you sold, all the restaurant and you went into like a travel like for about 2 years, correct? In Europe, in Asia. Where did you go, and anything that inspired you, and what country had the most impact, on you and your inspiration?
The first country that really, I think, always inspired me is Japan. I think they're, like what I try to do with the farmers and stuff like that. It's something that they have done for years, and they respect their purveyors. They respect the farmers. They understand that there's a the seasons. Things work for certain reason. And then when I went to China, it was unbelievable. It's the amount of, you take an eggplant, for example. Well, the Chinese can do 600 preparation of eggplant. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and their creation with dim sum. I thought that was a really genial idea, is to the bite size where you can have 2 or 3 bites and then move on to something else, the speed that they work with, and the way they prepare their dishes. Japan is definitely a clean taste. The food is always perfect. In China, is the speed, the creativity of what they do. It's unbelievable. So in Asia, that's probably the country that attracted me the most. And then in South America, it's probably Peru. My God, what a country. Their food, also the system that they have. They have a great aqua farm. They do a lot of fish raise in farms, which is, I think, it's also the future of our industry.
So those countries inspired you, but I think that's one of your first major influence on your cuisine is from your family, correct? It's your grandmother back in France. Yeah. So can you elaborate? Can you talk to us a little bit about it? And where are you, in fact, from France? Chamonix, correct?
Yeah, but my grandmother from Dijon.
Okay.
It's a Bourgogne region. And, of course, it's a wonderful region for
great
food.
Great food in Burgundy, yeah.
Yeah, great food. And great wine, too. And grandma was unbelievable in her cooking, and it was her home cooking. But, just thinking about it, I still remembering the flavor. My grandma always, we go to the market. My grandfather was actually, after the war, he was in charge of rebuilding the food system in France. He was a great part of Les Halles, at the turn of the century. I think it was like in 1930. Or I might be wrong in the date, but what his job was, it was to really deal with all the farmers and bring all the food to Paris, to the center of Paris, where there was a market called Les Halles. That's where all the restaurants, all the hotels, all the shops used to come and buy their vegetables. And he did that for years. Every time he come back from work, we always have the best lettuce, the best strawberries, the best. It was unbelievable, And I thought that food was always like this, When I grew up, it was, I always remember him going up the stairs with this little suitcase, and he always have a couple salad or a couple, some carrots, and it was unbelievable, And
that's probably where you started to develop your love for those fresh produce.
Yeah, my senses, it's like, what a carrot should taste like, what a salad should taste like. And there's a big difference, like when you go to a fast food restaurant, they don't use the same quality salad that we use. If you grow up eating fast food, this is what you think food should taste like, but for us, it was really different because the food was always wholesome and it was always great.
Thinking about today and your restaurant, so what ingredients are irreplaceable to you?
I think I love kaffir lime. I love lemongrass. Those items, I have a tendency, I love coconut milk. Like for example, we do a lobster bisque. So you think lobster bisque as being something with flour or butter or stuff like that, to thicken up. But what we do, for example, is like we have a ratio. We do the lobster stock and we do with the coconut milk, with the fresh coconut milk. We reduce that together and it's like eating a bisque that have flour and cream, but it's creamless and there's absolutely no gluten in it. Always people tell me, how do you do that? And there's no way there's no cream in it, but no, there's no cream, So we do a lot of research like that, That's the beauty of coconut milk. And a lot of people think it's bad for you, like there's a lot of fat, but when it's fresh, it's fantastic.
I'm curious as well, what unfamiliar ingredients are finding the way into your menu?
Mostly, what I'm working on right now a lot is Indian spices. I think that's a country that is, nobody use spices like they do, and just incredible, So I use a lot of garam masala, some, I used to never use cumin, but I use cumin now a lot in my dishes, all the mustard seed. So a lot of Indian spice, really.
Do you have the chance to go there during your trips in Asia?
Yes, I went there. It's also, I think they are the food that is going to come up the next few years because it's a lot of vegetable-based recipe. You know, people are a little bit unfamiliar with Indian food, but, you know, they have fantastic bread. They have really, really good dishes.
So, Chef, it's been already more than 30 minutes that we are talking together.
Oh, wow.
It's great, but I have, I want to finish the interview with a series of rapid-fire questions for you. So, where do you eat on Kauai when you are not working or not at home?
I eat at home, mostly. I don't really go out, but there's a restaurant called the Japanese Grandma in a small town called Hanapepe. And there's a Japanese chef that is really, really good. And it's really a fantastic little restaurant.
What is the best piece of chef advice you ever received?
Work hard. Work hard.
Okay. What condiments do you always have in your fridge?
My fridge, miso.
What cookbook have you read more than 5 times?
I think it's actually Alain Chapelle, French chef, a fantastic French chef. I read this book a lot. There's some very good ideas on natural cuisine too.
And this is like my last question here that I always wanted to ask a chef. I've never done it before, but what do you think about the restaurant critics?
Oh, I think it's good and bad. I think, it's like the critic in general, sometimes people ask me, what do you think about TripAdvisor or Yelp and stuff like that? I think at the end of the day, it gives you a sense, the good, the bad. At the end of the day, it gives you a sense of what's happening, in your restaurant. Sometimes it's good too, sometimes people have very good point. Sometimes it's as stupid as you can be, but for me, yeah, I was like, really seriously. And sometimes, people make a good point, so I look at it this way, I don't really, it's not good or bad for me. It's just another.
Do you read the critics that are on Yelp or, other sites, about GO2?
Some, some don't make sense, some, you can tell, because, the food that we do is not a food that you can find everywhere, so I understand that, like we talked at the beginning, some people are going to like it and some people are not going to like it. If I have 95% of the people that come in and like it, that's fine. But the critic is also, sometimes the people that like it don't write review, and the people that don't like it write review, and vice versa. So what's happened is that, at the end of the day, it works out. You have the good and the bad, and you just have to accept it, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Chef, for being a guest on Flavors Unknown. I appreciate your time and waking up early in Kauai to be on the show. And definitely, this is the place, JO2, that I will come back to next time I am on the island.
Oh, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. No worries if you were not able to write down some information that our guest was talking about, because you can find all of those in the episode show note on flavorsunknown.com. And if you are enjoying the show, please leave a review or a rating, as it helps other people to find it as well. If you have friends that are foodies, please send this podcast their way, as I am always happy to have more people listening. I see you in 2 weeks, and until then, remember that people who love to eat are always the best people.
You've just enjoyed another delicious episode of Flavors Unknown. Hungry for more? Hit subscribe. Tell us where you're listening from by leaving a review. And for social media and show notes, head to flavorsunknown.com.